Sorry for those. You can hear us?
Testing. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Sorry for those. Okay, I've muted. Okay.
It's echoing. Chair, on a point of order. Chair, on a point of order, there is no sound at all.
Thank you very much, Chair. Strategic guidance, higher risk. And higher risk. Projects and by outlining. Going to give at the end, writing five-year period, five-year length, commodity presentation is
purpose, and it is well maintained. It is the livelihood of the Western Cape economy because it takes people from or access to social and economic opportunities. Okay. So we all know, like I said, transport takes you to social economic opportunities, and it speaks to freight movement of goods, basically connecting the economy and people in our towns, cities, and specifically also within our rural areas. But there's always a but in terms of transport, in terms of the challenges that we have within the system, levels of poverty, unemployment, and equality remains high within our population. Spatial issues in terms of not a lot of spatial transformation happening. Then most households within the province rely on public transport or NMT, which in most cases are very unsafe or not dignified to use. Again, road safety is an issue. The freight transport system is inefficient. Our road network is in a good condition, but there's still backlogs that needs to be addressed. Then in terms of freight, there's a dominance in terms of road-based freight transport, which also contribute to congestion and also the greenhouse gas emissions. There's limited funding, institutional capacity to address these pressing challenges. So, like Minister also indicated, the PLTF is a collaborative approach. It's not just the Western Cape Department of Mobility's responsibility in terms of the PLTF to speak to these challenges. I'll go then into the PLTF strategies. It's broken down into specific modes. The first is the public transport strategy. So for each of these strategies, we've also crafted visions that we want to achieve. It's a high quality integrated public transport system that provides inclusive access to opportunities. So we've identified 7 priority areas or strategic initiatives or focus areas where we can play a part in terms of achieving that specific vision. The first one is to restore rail as the backbone of our public transport system. So basically working together to restore metro rail services and then devolve rail to the appropriate level of government. We didn't want to be too prescriptive in terms of where the function needs to lie within the PLTF. So there's a lot of discussions around that still needs to be taken within the future around specifically devolvement. Formalize and improve minibus taxi services. One of the key interventions that we highlighted within the PLTF is around Share Smart in terms of improving service quality and safety, and then ultimately progressing to formalization, and then also establish a minibus taxi training academy. Then we focus specifically also on delivering bus rapid transit and quality-based services. Improve our gap services and also integrate that, implement MyCity Phase 2A, roll out Go George Phase 5 and 6, and also to investigate MBT coexisting model. We will go into detail around that specific intervention in a later slide. Then to also our fourth focus area within the public transport sphere is to expand public transport priority measures. It speaks to dedicated lanes for buses and MBTs, signaling and then queue jump lanes. Then one of the that's close to my heart also is improve rural connectivity. It's basically to explore mechanisms to improve that connectivity within our rural areas through possibly MBT services, learner transport, and then also in NMT infrastructure development within that areas, and then provide specialized support, consider expanding the job seeker travel voucher program, park and ride, dial ride and universal access services, and then also very important to explore mechanisms to improve the learner transport services between our department and Western Cape Education Department. Then our 7th focus area is to establish a representative a body specifically for meter taxis and e-hailing services, just to coordinate that type mode of transport. Then I'll just go into a bit detail in terms of Shayla Smart. We all know that minibus taxis carry around 75% of public transport passengers. But MBTs are often unsafe and provide a poor service quality and also the conflict within the industry. So Shayla is basically a joint initiative between the Western Cape government, City of Cape Town, and then Santaco. What it wants to achieve is to improve service quality, safety, the whole passenger experience while using the service, and then to ultimately progress to industry formalization and also to empower the industry and then really reduce illegal operations and violent conflict. Just to highlight that the department is investigating funding sources to implement this strategic project of the PLTF. So just in short, what interventions is attached to Shayla Smart: vehicle tracking, driver registration, branding of vehicles, public transport in this interchange capacity enhancements, and also to drive the operators or drivers. Then in terms of the George coexisting model, there's 40 or just under 40 licenses within the manufacturing industry in that part operating in Thembalethu that will form part of phase 4 rollout of the GIPTN. A coexisting model has been proposed to ensure smooth rollout, basically to ensure the sensibility of these operators within the area. It's basically also for us to have a beneficial relationship between the government and also the minibus taxi industry. It's a phased approach, tracking of MBTs, followed by the introduction of fare collective systems, and then ultimately for these just under 40 licenses to be part of the Go George service. So, Chair, I'll move to the non-motorized transport strategy of the PLTF. In terms of the National Household Travel Survey, 50% of all our learners walk to school, and 40% of all our workers walk to work. Like I indicated earlier, the conditions under which people are walking or using NMT in our communities is normally unsafe, under unwelcoming conditions, or in most cases not dignified for people to use NMT infrastructure. Then in terms of, we've crafted a vision for NMT, walking and cycling are the preferred choice for our short journeys. So we've identified 3 focus areas for strategic interventions for NMT. Is to improve NMT planning and design, basically for us to develop NMT guidelines that can be shared with municipalities, finalizing the Western Cape NMT safety strategy that is run by our safety law enforcers, and then developing a walking and cycling strategy for the city. Then also develop a high quality walking and cycling networks. The idea here is to establish a NMT demonstration town to test and demonstrate the impact of targeted initiatives, expand the project, and then also to continue development of NMT network within the city. Then also scaled up the bicycle distribution program that is also within our department. I'll move to our environmental and sustainable transport strategy. Again, a just transition to a net zero and climate resilient transport system by 2050. Within the province, transport contributes around 28% of our carbon emissions and 12% nationally. So we've identified 5 strategic focus areas or strategic interventions to speak to environmentally sustainable transport, to strengthen our EV policy and regulatory framework. So it's basically define and start implementing that EV strategy that we've developed, regulate charging infrastructure, and set fleet transition mandates. So electrification of government and public transport vehicles, fleet, basically electric bus rollout, minibus taxi electrification, and then also replacing the government GMT fleet with EVs or NEVs. Then development of public charging infrastructure, so basically expanding that network, integrated climate adaptation into all our planning, and then leverage economic opportunities and also to mitigate some of the environmental impacts. I'm moving on to the transport infrastructure strategy that's proposed within the PLTF. So it again speaks to a well-maintained network of transport infrastructure and then facilities that will enable that growth and provide that access to opportunities and also progress to net zero. So the first focus area and some of the strategic initiatives there is around the rail infrastructure, restoring the rail infrastructure, developing a clear strategy for Transnet's infrastructure backlogs, and then also proper rail maintenance. Road infrastructure, implement major road-related projects, which we also highlighted within the PLTF as part of the implementation plan, ensuring national, provincial, and municipal road infrastructure is well maintained. So we normally go within the ITP process, assisting municipality, do a conditional assessment, do a needs analysis, speak to DOI in terms of what the current needs are through the ITP processes. Then public transport infrastructure, again continuing some of the PTI upgrades that's happening, create the holding areas, stop and goes, and also within MBT ranks through the wholesale smart process, and then also delivering and maintaining public transport infrastructure through our major IPTN projects like the City of Cape Town and the George project. I'll move on to the freight transport strategy. The vision that we've crafted there is an optimized and integrated freight transport system. The focus areas there, because we have a Western Cape freight demand model, which can be used to refine some of our freight strategies by using evidence-based planning in terms of making decisions. So basically, we propose there for a more widespread use of the Western Cape freight demand model. Optimize mode allocation by having clear, specific modal shift targets for commodities within the industry from road to rail. Then advocate for a dedicated railways transport solutions, because we know in municipality a lot of transport costs within municipalities is around moving of waste. Rail reform participation and public transport strategy, so developing a provincial rail strategy or framework to prepare our department or our province in terms of the changes within the rail reform process that's undergone in terms of the freight industry. Increase road freight transport efficiency and also the management of dangerous goods, improve driver training and wellness, support interventions that's happening at truck stops, and then advocate for increased self-regulations through RTMS and PBS. We are busy with the PBS policy that we can also brief you on in terms of that part of the freight industry where it speaks to safety of freight vehicles, then also to reduce freight demand, again working closely with economic development and tourism to start that discussions with the freight industry in terms of beneficiation, reduce waste and consumption. Then I'll move to our safety and security a strategy. The vision that we crafted there is the safe transport of people and goods within the Western Cape. So we've proposed, or the focus area, or one of the focus areas there is stronger law enforcement and regulation, expand the highway patrols and interception units, and then enhance our enforcement capabilities through technology, where the hub will play a big role. Safer transport, awareness and behavior change components. And two of the important things that we've also been discussing this week with the municipality is to start reinstating district safety plans, would be a good start for implementation plan for the establishment of road safety coordination structures within municipality and on provincial level. Implement SAHLA Smart, proactive minibus taxi conflict resolution, finalize and start implementing the Western Cape NMT safety strategy that we've developed, and then also continue public transport unit within the city of Cape Town. Then there's other strategies that the PLTF requirements, or basically requires us to do, is in terms of a provincial transport management strategy, tourism transport strategy, and then also aviation and maritime strategy. We all remember this is a provincial land transport framework, so the PLTF doesn't much focus on aviation and maritime, but we felt the need that there is some challenges within that modes of transport. So we have highlighted some of the focus areas that we want to pursue in terms of lobbying or be part of that coordination structures that speaks to some of the challenges within aviation, within the ports, within maritime as a mode of transport. So the first one there is the Provincial Transport Management Strategy that speaks to travel demand management measures within the Western Cape. That speaks to carpooling, work from home, compressed work hours, reallocation of office spaces. So the PLTF speaks to that. So the aim there is to reduce car use and to increase use of public transport, and then harness digital systems technology where the integrated transport hub would play a role. Then in terms of tourism strategy, the basic idea of this chapter is basically for tourists to start using public transport as a mode of transport when they come to visit our province. Then also for our department to be involved in some of that intergovernmental coordination for tourist transport. Then, like I said, in terms of aviation and maritime, it's basically for our department to be part of that discussions that's happening within the aviation and maritime maritime space, increasing diverse and airport capacity, improve access to the airport, expanding of air freight capabilities and capacity at the airport, improve the port performance, enhance collaboration, like I said earlier, start that discussions with the transnets of the world. Then in terms of the funding strategy, I need to highlight that additional funding is required for us to take the PLTF forward. Just an example in terms of SAHLA Smart. So a number of alternative funding sources has been identified through the PLTF to supplement current budgets. So it's basically what we want to achieve there is reform public transport funding, having that discussions with our national counterparts in terms of considering consolidating some of these national public transport grants, changing the definition of funding definitions to sustainable transport in addition to, as it stands now, public transport. Motor vehicle license fees, consider increasing fees on larger cars with higher emissions, less energy, and then also to tap into some of the funds in terms of climate funds, funds like the Green Climate Fund, Clean Technology Fund, to tap into that to supplement some of our budget constraints. Then also to pursue partnerships with our private sector to fund some of these interventions that I'm just gonna speak to in the next slide. So in terms of our priority interventions for just our Western Cape Mobility Department, in terms of public transport, there's a few projects that I've also spoke earlier. It speaks to park and rides, that speaks to the whole rail restoration and devolution, implement Sahela Smart over the next couple of years, establish the minibus taxi training academy, roll out phase 5 and 6 of the GIPTN, improve rural transport connections, and then also consider expanding the job seeker voucher program. In terms of what our responsibility in terms of our environmentally sustainable transport strategy, replace GMT fleet with electric vehicles. NMT, like I said earlier, provincial guidelines, this implementation of the NMT safety strategy, establish that NMT demonstration town, bicycle distribution still on the table. Safety and security strategy, what we want to do there, or projects or interventions identified there. Highway patrol interception unit, and enhancing the enforcement capabilities through the technology where the hub is going to play a big role. Awareness, we've spoken this whole week about awareness and communication. Reinstate the district safety plan, again, re-establish the PRTMCC structures, and then also MBT conflict resolution to be an ongoing process. In the freight, we also have a more comprehensive freight strategy that is captured within the PLTF, provincial freight strategy. We've identified initiatives there, so we will continue the implementation of the Western Cape freight in this freight strategy, and then also a freight rail revitalization support framework that we will develop to foresee or to speak of some of the changes within the freight industry, where we play a role in terms of aviation and maritime. We in discussions to establish a port PMU, and then also the Provincial Transport Management Hub, where the Integrated Transport Hub will play extremely big role within that specific strategy of the PLTF. Then in terms of monitoring and coordination structures, which Minister also spoke to about earlier, we found that there is existing mechanisms in our province where these coordination and liaison and conflict resolution can happen effectively, like MINMEX, JDMA structures, the PSTP, the Provincial Sustainable Transport Program structure, the IPC, LTAFs that's run by the City of Cape Town, and then also the MBT task team. So it's that structures is in place, so we might just utilize that structures for more strategic type of discussions within the transport industry. However, there is a need, because we do also a lot of assistance with municipalities in terms of developing the integrated transport plans. Like I said, that's required also in terms of the NLTA. So we need some structures within the municipality to coordinate some of the the mandates that's given to municipalities, but we're also going to work closely with DOI in terms of rationalizing these structures on district levels. So it will basically provide a forum for regular engagement with us and our municipalities, sharing information, raising issues and challenges that we can take back to these bigger structures for resolution, and then engaging with our transport entities such as PRASA and SANROM. So we expect this forum to meet once a quarter, and then we will report back to our respective departments and see how we can strategically speak to some of these issues that is within our municipal space. So, Chairperson, in terms of our next steps, we aim to publish the PLTF for a 28-day period for public comments by the end of this month, hopefully. Then a final draft will be approved by our MSC, where it will be tabled at Cabinet. Also in April, once that, like I said, it's going to go up to Pretoria for the National Minister of Transport's stamp of approval. We will also develop a smaller handbook for easy reference, because what we found is the requirements in terms of the PLTF is so comprehensive that you will never get away with under 300 pages if you consider all that. But if we don't consider everything that's within the requirements, the National will say it's not compliant in terms of Section 35 and published regulations. So we will have a summary handbook, a 30-pager for everyone as a reference book. So thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
So thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity to present our Provincial Land Transport Framework draft. It is a draft, and that's why it was important that we actually bring it here to engage the Standing Committee on where we want to take land transport to within this province, and seek the support and the blessing of the Standing Committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Department Minister, for presenting. Just a clarity before I open up for the questions. So it is a draft. So the Cabinet approved a draft, because it says there in the last one that it has been approved by the Cabinet.
No,
no. In the last,
it first has to be approved. First has to be gazetted for public comment. That has to run for 28 days. Once all of the public comments are considered, we will then move towards finalizing the particular document, the PLTF, and then it gets tabled to the Cabinet.
Oh, so the Cabinet approved the principle of having, because I'm looking at the second last bullet. Okay. So
no, the Cabinet approved PLTF. So once it's been approved by Cabinet, so we will go out for public comment. We'll get all of the comments. We'll then reconsolidate or revise the PLTF. Then we will table it to the Cabinet. Once the Cabinet approved PLTF is there, endorsed by Cabinet, it then gets tabled or submitted to the National Minister of Transport. So those are the steps, Chair.
So for us, it's about, we'll make an input. If need be, you can add. All right. Thank you very much. Members, if we could probably take questions and see the amount of questions that we can take, because if need be, before they respond, we can have maybe a break of tea. But let's see how we can be able to take, this can take us so far. Do I see any hands? Sorry, Zah, you'll help me from, okay, so there's, okay, we'll do the online later. Member Heron, who's else? Member Constable, Member Masipa online. Let's take those three, and then fourth is me. Let's see. Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. It's not really questions, but really some comment that maybe you take into account. I think the starting point was for me, I've got a few points. This notion of formalizing the minibus taxi industry. I think we must change our mindset around the minibus taxi industry. The suggestion that they are an informal public transport service doesn't make sense given what they have to do in order to lawfully operate on our roads. That's not an informal operation. So the idea that we need to, as Big Brother, come in and formalize something that is already formal, they have to apply for route, they have to be on a prescribed route, they have to have a license, they have to have a roadworthy vehicle. If they deviate, their vehicles are impounded. So they're not informal operations. They have prescribed routes. They operate under associations. They have to have a license. So I don't know what the informality is that we want to try and address. We should rather approach it that they are a formal public transport service, a massive public transport service that contributes to the mobility of our residents, and move from that point rather than saying they're informal, so let's formalize them. I make that point, you can accept it or not, but I don't think that they're informal at all. On the job seeker voucher, I think I raised this in a previous presentation that we had. The idea that we're going to try and expand the job seeker voucher, and I raised it with the previous HOD, that the work that she had done previously in the city of Cape Town was that it's actually cheaper just to say to people you can have free public transport off-peak. That way we not only provide mobility without barriers, unnecessary barriers, but we also achieve one of the other objectives of the PLTF, which is to shift people from roads to public transport, or shift people to public transport. So if we can, if I was the MEC, I would be exploring that. So I'm not. It's not a question. It's just I'm making comments and a proposal that maybe he can consider, because if there's a financial model that says it is less administratively burdensome to say that there's public transport is free in the off-peak period, then why don't we do that and save a lot of people a lot of hassle, and also start to shift people to public transport. On the coexisting model, I just again raised this, and you can address it in your final document. But I'm wondering about the modeling that has been done around a coexisting model with minibus taxis and BRT, because once you have minibus taxis operating alongside BRT, BRT cannot compete with frequency, convenience, all those things that minibus taxis offer to a commuter. So what impact will it have on your revenue that you're expecting to derive from the BRT service by allowing minibus taxis or permitting or exploring this coexisting model? I'm not saying the coexisting model is wrong. I just, from my own experience, I remember the time, passengers will choose a minibus taxi over a bus service because the bus service is first scheduled, so they've got to wait for the time that it arrives. It has a pre-designated stop where you can get on and off, and it's not as convenient for the user. So if you have a coexisting model, what is the impact going to be on the actual BRT services? Now I can't read my handwriting for the next point. I wanted just on the walking and cycling strategy for the city of Cape Town. I assume that's what it meant by the city. I mean, there is an existing non-motorized transport strategy. So is the plan to replace that, or is there something wrong with that non-motorized transport strategy? The problem with these strategies is that they never get implemented. So, I mean, I know that there's an NMT strategy, certainly from when I was there. I don't think it's ever been implemented. Now we're going to come up with a walking and cycling strategy. I mean, there's no point in a strategy if it's never implemented. And then my final question, which maybe is a question, is we talk about rail devolution. To who are we asking for this devolution? Because we campaigned in elections, and I know that the Democratic Alliance campaigned that devolution should happen to the province when we campaigned for provincial and national elections. And then in local government elections, we campaigned that rail should be devolved to the city. So who should devolution go to? I know that at one point the former MEC or Minister Donald Grant was working on rail legislation. What happened to that? It was about devolution and around concessioning on the existing network. So what do we mean by rail devolution, and who do we envisage it being devolved to? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I would like to understand the exploration of a mechanism to improve rural transport connection. What does it mean? Is there more detail that they can give to us? Because I would like to know where we are with rural transport, and what do we want to do with that connection, and in which towns are we talking about? Which rural towns are we really talking about? Then, just a question with regards to reinstate district safety plans. I believe there is a district safety plan in another department. Are we in this department going to develop our own now? Are we going to fund that district plan? And why not link up with the other department of MEC Mare? Or do we have enough money to do our own thing in all departments? Then, with regards to the Gazette for 28 days. So where's the public participation process in that? A person that don't have access to that specific Gazette, how will he then make comments into this transport plan? Is it only for people that have access to Gazettes, or are we going to take this out to the communities? Because there's a community out there who's using this transport who also wants to give input. Will we allow for this department to go out and have that public participation process, or are we not really interested in what the people on the ground is saying? Is it not for them to also give comments into this plan? Thank you, Chair.
Member Masipa.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, thanks. We can hear you.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning to colleagues. Thank you, Minister, for your presentation. I think it's a welcome strategy, but I just want to get a clarity. I didn't hear your opening remark as we were struggling with the sound coming through. This strategy is about land transport framework, and I noted that on the vision it talks about transport infrastructure strategy, and obviously talking about rail, road, and public transport. But then on one of the slides, then you add aviation and maritime. Is that just by the wayside, or is it really part of the core areas that you will obviously be focusing on in terms of this land transport framework? Because I think it's my understanding that this is really focused on land. So the maritime and the aviation will probably require a different strategy. I just want to get clarity there. Yeah, I think the rest I'm quite satisfied and covered with your presentation, and I definitely welcome the strategy. And I think, as Honorable Heron indicated, that is really nice and well to have strategy, but really the implementation is key. Going forward to just ensure that the strategies are driven and are implemented. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Member Ngansu.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me join those who have welcomed the framework, the transport framework. Just a couple of points to make. The first one relates to the goals set on two areas. One, the land transport framework argues that you achieve a modal share of 80% public transport, right? Walking, cycling by 2050. Now, a point is made, both in the remarks by the MEC as well in the introduction in the main document, that is for 5 years and beyond. But specific are these goals and objectives feasible given, in this instance, the current state of public transport and safety? Be it is walking, be it is cycling. Now, and particularly in the context of the Western Cape and Cape Town in particular. If so, what are the most immediate objectives? You know, these are long term, 2050. But if we were to say, given the fact that primarily it should be a 5-year, it should be based on a 5-year period, right? In the immediate, what is possible to achieve? So that we don't develop objectives, for the sake of, so that we're not accused of developing objectives for the sake. That no, we're forward-looking, department or government, Now, that for me is quite important. Yes, I know the issues. We noted the rate of those who walk to work, to school, and so on. That they're quite a number, But given the issue of safety and all the state of public transport, on a public transport strategy, you make a very important statement that where you say you see to restore rail as a big bone of public transport. Now, there we agree. But I want to propose that an addition be made to say it's not just about the restoring, but also expansion of rail. And I think that should feature. I'll monitor this quite close. That should feature expansion. I'll make an example. An expansion of rail from Krizani to connecting Somerset, right? And you can go to town about that. But not only that, I think this public transport strategy, in this context of rail, must consider exploring connecting metro with some strategic rural towns. There is no rail that takes us to just Atlantis. Yet we know how useful Atlantis is in the economic front. I'm not going to talk about Saldanha. It's not far, just here. So I want to propose that such be considered. The second aspect, you talk about improving public transport lanes. And indeed, they must be improved. Public transport lanes. And you take, for instance, the lane to Blowback as an example. That can't we have that across? If you go to Soweto, for instance, that dedicated particularly for the Indona bus Ria Vaya, right, across. But how about here? You only see such dedicated lanes only in Blowback. But the second point, we should not just improve, but also consider, because I believe that you are using the concept improve deliberately as a basis to ensure that what the lanes you find in Blowback that you're now going to find in Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha. That's the assumption I'm making. I want to believe that assumption is correct, but I want to introduce another concept to say, let's talk about also building of lanes to and from work. And I'm proposing that this be inserted in this land transport strategic framework, so that workers can also be able to get home early and assist their children for homework and attend to other activities post-work. That's the rationale behind my argument. They mustn't be made to arrive early to work to sell their labor only. On the transport infrastructure, it's just broad. Yes, a strategy. When it is broad, at a particular time you can come and say, no, this is what we achieved, because you could not spell out as what are you talking about in this instance. And one of the issues which I would like to propose is that the issue of an upgrade, of upgrading taxi ranks, should dominate this question, and the building of interchanges. And it should be in this framework as the immediate, medium, and long term. We can't be quiet about such. The building of interchanges, the upgrade of the. You go to Belleville, for instance. Even here, taxis are found anywhere because we're unable to follow development and the growth of the industry. In the document, there is a talk about conflict between national and provincial land transport. Is that true? Now, I hear the point member Aaron made, and I agree with him. Does this conflict exist in other provinces? Have we traveled ourselves to go to KZN, to go to Gauteng, and get the attitude? What is the attitude in respect to this? Or is it only unique in the Western Cape? So in the interest of our people, actually, I think we should consider that to balance our argument on position which we seek to take. At a particular time, I'll argue my point about the whole notion of devolution of rail and what it means, or what it should mean. But an important question has been posed by Brett Herron. Safety and security. You talk about, I think an attempt has been made to detail or argue what you term as proactive minibus taxi conflict resolution. What do you mean by that? Because presently it appears that government is found wanting. Government is found wanting. I think we're all aware about the incident that took place recently in Nyanga and the ongoing elimination of or shooting. Not Carter as a broader association, but a particular branch. So, because if this will be realized in their system, in responding to the present situation, must be inspired by how we are responding to the present situation. The department, for me, hasn't demonstrated any leadership to that. No, I must make this point here that you haven't demonstrated proactive leadership to attending to the challenges facing the taxi industry. As part of proactive, as a response to this statement. The second last point, there is this talk about the shift, and this argument has been there. It's not a provincial matter, it's a national level and so on. The shift of freight from rail, from road to rail. And all of us will agree. All of us will agree. But the issue should not be reduced to the issue of addressing the fact that it is carbon intensive. What about our roads? What about the accidents? Because for me, these trucks are responsible for the state of our roads, and that roads must be maintained all the time. And also they're responsible for the accident we see. I think we need to add, but again, when we talk about this question, we must talk about the future of the trucks. What is the future of the trucks in the Western Cape and in South Africa in this instance? And the point is made that this is not just for Western Cape, because it is informed by the National Land Transport Strategy Framework. And that conversation for me, I think, is important. And the future, when you talk about the future of the trucking sector, you also talk about the future of those workers. Because historic freight has been on the rail. Also, related to a point I made earlier, the framework argues that it seeks to reduce illegal operations. I'll leave the violent conflict. I think I've already dealt with it. Illegal operations of the minibus taxis. A point should have been made to attempt to say, then actually, what is the source of this illegal occupation? What is the source of this? Because you're not going to be able to respond to it till you attend to the source of the problem. And somewhere, as I was reading the main document, there is a talk about the patterns and trends of development. Till we address that question of trends and patterns of industrial and what? And residential development, that I think we can be able to address this question. And one point we once made, I'm not sure that it was in the chamber or what, was to say, even if it's temporal permits or provisional permits should be, or in the course of building new industrial areas, new residential areas, that should be, municipality must be involved, the transport aspect should be involved, and must respond to this question, because workers, when they busy with the construction of such sites, how would they get there? And in the document, in your own overview, MEC, you made a point that public transport is used by the workers, and you mentioned construction workers. How will they get there? If provisions are not made for the minibus taxi industry in this instance, to take them to and from work, and even post-construction, right? Now, so that's a submission which I want to make here in this, but let me just correction. I would argue and say, not the entire construction sector, but a particular section of construction is the one that uses. Other sectors, they have their own trucks and buggies. You know, I don't want us to make some of the, set ourselves goals which are not necessarily achievable. There's a talk about the tourism transport strategy, Chair, the last point. Yabona pha kuyathandazwa ngoku. Kuthiwa. Yabona igama loyiselo nyana moya ngcwele. We shall promote tourists to use public transport. Batsho pha. HOD, you are saying here you are going to promote tourists to use public transport. Hayibo. Yet South Africa, not South Africa, people of the Western Cape have no confidence. Actually, are not going to public transport by choice. Till we transform it, we professionalize it, we modernize it, that you can be able to have it. For me, I want to argue and say, this should be reviewed, Chair, this aspect. At least we will be seen as people who are just idealists. This should be reviewed. Not in the next 10 or 20 years, where I stand. Given how our society is degenerating or is deteriorating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. I think it's my last input. Probably before you answer, then we can take a break and then come back, because it was quite useful information. Thank you again for doing the presentations, especially this is, I'll keep on saying it's a newish, it's no longer new now. So some of the questions, it will be about how you could be able to stay on course instead of every now and again we see as a arme foitoch. I think we have gone past that part of it. So the first question, the AG was highlighting the one thing about this mobility, the department might be newish, but now they are on their own. So the issue of the unqualified audit. But the main reason was about the material non-compliance strat plan and performance management, strat. That was the strategic plan and performance management. So how do you consider that part of it? Because when I asked them to explain thoroughly so that we can see how we can be able to also to assist the department in regard to that. They were talking about some of the examples of the PDOs and other parts where they don't talk to what the department is supposed to do, and then it ended up not being able to look in terms of the targets and the performance. So with this framework, have you considered those highlights? Because just for example, when I was looking at it, for me, I might be wrong. When you talk about part of the vision, it's fine, it's a vision. Now, when you do as a goal in the priority area, when you talk about the infrastructure, improving, because I'm saying, actually, your infrastructure, the roads infrastructure is not under you, but you want to take it upon yourself that you'll improve the roads. Yet you don't have you haven't been provided that mandate, which is the only department probably of transport that doesn't have. You don't have that mandate. Also, you even indicated that you'll even secure public-private funding to do some of these kind of things, which I see some of them, they are out of what you are supposed to do, because I'm still linking with what the AG said, that whilst they might have a beautiful framework, but I see that you are too hard on some for yourselves. Yes, it's a dream that you can do. I think you are too hard in regard to if you'll be able to not to have the unqualified audit on the issue of the strat plan and the performance management. I'm just throwing it out there. And then the other part is the issue related to the electric. You want to replace all GMT as electric cars.
Tenders, isn't it?
No, it's because at the end they have to set targets themselves, and then when they don't achieve those targets, and then it might be problematic. Yes, it might be a vision, but at what extent? And also, I probably maybe we can maybe do it at 25, 26 to 29, 30 instead of 24, 25, even for this, because 24 we're done, because it's still a draft. Probably I'm just making an example so that to make things easier for you. So it's one of those things. And then which public-private have already approached and specifically for what? Which private specifically for what? And then I didn't hear anything about the minibus task team that you alluded to, especially in the last year's annual report, where that you used it as a vehicle. After there were some of the protests then as a vehicle. At the time you had about 28 meetings, I think by the Feb, 28 meetings. I'm getting reminded because you alluded to the fact of where you'll be looking in terms of the MPT conflict resolution, like interventions. But I don't hear, because previously we were saying that we are using that structure for such. And especially now that we hear there were taxis that are banned and all of those, I was interested in terms of at what extent that you have made engagement, but that's not for now. Those part of also of those. And then lastly, I think it goes to what Member Constable was saying. Whilst you will have now resuscitated the district safety plans, and also you have alluded on the non-metro in regard to the to transport services. Have you looked in terms of all the, like the 5 districts, the 5 non-metro districts? And also you wanted also extra funding. You want actually that to continue receiving funding to support legacy bus services and to support sustainable transport improvements in non-metro areas. I'm quoting as it is. But for me, how does that go beyond the Go George? And the Go George, you are making an example of Thembalethu, but I always ask myself, what about the Uniondale side? Because yes, I understand and it's good, and Thembalethu is my constituents, by the way, but what about this side? What about the Uniondale side, the Harlem side, just at least maybe for a bus once a week, those kind of things. But that is George. But what about the CKD? What about Central Karoo? at least to have one reliable, because it does impact, because I'm looking in terms of what was your opening vision. It talks about the well-being. It talks about the health. It talks about the, what is the other thing? Health, well-being, and dignity. But the people of Nelsport, the people of Maritzburg, they've got nothing. The people of the Craig, what is the Craig? The Kurland village in the B2, they've got nothing. At least if they could have at least one form of, when you are looking in terms of those funds, just once a week. Oh, lastly, now the carbon emission. There's a train that comes from all the way from Northern Cape to Saldanha. It's an iron ore. Once you say longest, that iron ore. At what extent that you play a role, not only in terms of, although it's under it's not under you, but there's a whole issue of that orange color that is being emitted through this iron ore that is being carried, specifically now when it comes from, starting from the Western Cape, coming from the Matsikama up to the Saldanha, because the whole of that area is not only orange, but also at what extent that you can piggyback, because it comes only once a week. Why don't you also use as a test to test the not only the freight, but probably maybe in partnership with also with a rail people, in regard to test to have the long ago once a week transportation from the Matsikama, whether Friedendal or whatever, to come, whilst this one is up to Saldanha, but to what an extent that probably you focus on from the Saldanha to the metro, so that you can bring all these viscous people just once a week to come for shopping. If you go to the Doringby, to Mosflay, and all of those people there, they will say, oh, the last time I've been to Cape Town, the last time I've been to wherever, it was when my great-grandmother was alive, when there used to be this once-a-week train. But now you already have got the rail that is working. At what extent that you piggyback, instead of maybe trying to explore others, because we've got one that is working, but use it for how they can be able to minimize in terms of the goods, but now for the local, not necessarily from the Northern Cape, because the rail, the infrastructure is there, but also make use for the commercial, and to take the Utanisaras all the way from the Niveras, because that they long for that. They do want to come this side, but also in terms of the carbon emission. So I think what we could do now, if there are no questions, it's also for us, probably take a break, 10, 19. Do we come at 35? It's 10:35. So can we come at 10:35? So I think there is something to eat there so that we can hear from your responses. Thank you very much. Yeah, now it's 10:35. Yeah, over to the department. I'm not going to put a limitation, but as long at least you can give us 30 minutes, at least the minimum, so don't respond until 12 o'clock.
Yeah, we are going to be sweet and short.
Okay, sorry, there's a hand there.
No, I'm sorry for doing this to you and the meeting chair. There is just a point which I think I must just make it on record that, particularly in the context of safety and so on, last week we're dealing with policing needs and priorities for the police oversight and community safety. I would like to advise the department to consider getting that document and see as to what is it that they can take out of it and integrate somewhere in the context of dealing with the issue of crime and so for future integrated programs, because while they're dealing with the police, but inevitably they had to dive into your own department, in the context of your traffic in this instance, including understanding the size of your resources. Thank you very much. That's the point, Chair, I wanted to make.
No, Chair, thank you very much, and to the honourable members for the questions and for the inputs. I'm going to deal with the easy one, and the difficult ones the colleagues are going to attend to. I've already caucused outside and said you must deal with that one. But Chair, the issue of devolution, and I want to state it boldly as well, that there is no tension between us as mobility and the Minister of Transport nationally, or with the Department of Transport nationally. We are working well, and for the last 7 months, I've been on calls with the Minister whenever there's an issue, like the issue of Kwanye Enyanga. I was in contact with the National Minister saying what is currently happening and all of that. And also, when we talk about devolution, it's not to say that it's an element of competing with national and province or city. But also we've come to understand, because we had a particular discussion on devolution with the Minister and with PRASA as well, saying that, currently there is no devolution policy. Because Cabinet must still come to that level where we're going to say when we have to devolve functions, what are the requirements? And who are we going to devolve to, and what is it? And also what is important, we know that the City of Cape Town has done a lot of study in terms of what options should devolution be given to a particular state who is capable of rendering a service, what kind of function do they want to fulfill. So that's why we are putting it, we are pro-devolution, and we don't, because we feel that if there is a competent state that can actually assist another state in fulfilling, a service for service delivery, then we must actually look at that. But currently we know there is no such a policy, and we don't know by when would that policy be coming out. So that is on the devolution. Also, on the issue of the future, and I think, Member Ngenzu, I have also been saying when I was briefed on the draft by the official to say, currently when we don't have a plan for mobility in the Western Cape, that is forward thinking, that is looking at the future. To say, how do we see taxi ranks in the next 20 years? And how do we see the different modes of transport in the next 20 years? Are we still going to be having minibus taxis in the next 20 years? No one knows that. So, and also in terms of our non-metro municipalities, in terms of infrastructure, how do we see them, in the near future? How do we see people from Nelspruit going to Beaufort West without any struggle to do what they want to do? And hence we are saying this is an ideal opportunity for us to say we are bringing a framework as a guide. So ultimately, whatever plan or whatever strategy that we will have for mobility will be informed by this particular framework. And that's what we want to have. And ultimately, Chair, we will be coming to the Standing Committee in the near future with a long vision term, strategy for something like a master plan, whatever we are going to be calling it, to say this is where we see mobility in the next 50 years. so that to make sure that we shift the needle in this province. And also in terms of the minibus taxi industry. And I always try to shy away from always having a meeting of mobility, and people think mobility only consists of the minibus taxi industry. But also, I also, compose myself and say, we will always have such discussions. Whenever we talk about mobility, minibus taxis will always come. Why? Because they transport 75% of the residents of this province. So they will always dominate negotiations, or they will always dominate debates. But what I'm trying to say also, I would agree partially with Member Heron in terms of the word transforming, because I've been saying to Deirdre myself, we've been saying we only talk about let's transform the minibus taxi industry, and no one can actually unpack it for me, Chair. When you say we need to transform, what do you mean? How do you envisage the sector looking in the next 10 years? And I've said to them, actually, Chair, that maybe we need to have a conversation with Santaco or with the industry itself and say, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? How do you see yourselves? How do you want to transform, if you need to transform, or where can we better, so that we deal with the narrative of all this negative thing that has been said about the industry, but we stop talking about the industry without the industry. I think that's our take going forward. And also in terms of freight, we agree in terms of when we talk about freight, road to rail, it's not only an element of carbon. It's all also about safety. It's all about about our roads. We'll have to make sure that our roads have a longer lifespan, and we all know the impact that our trucks are having on our roads and their contribution into accidents. So when we talk about rail, road to rail is basically also to deal with the element of road safety within our province, and that's what we want to achieve. And I don't want to be defensive. I will take this engagement as an opportunity for us as a department to go back and listen to what the members has been saying and check where is it that we can, improve. But because when I have to go to cabinet with this particular plan or framework, it must be something that is tangible. It's not just a compliance exercise, but something that can actually assist us to deal with all the issues that we are confronted with within the space of mobility in this province. Thank you very much. And then the difficult ones I'll give to the colleagues.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Chair and members. We really welcome the constructive comments and inputs and questions that the members have raised. I'll just handle a few of them before I hand the really difficult ones over to Deirdre. But I wanted to start off by saying, Chair, and some of the comments around the existence of current plans or strategies, for example, non-motorized transport strategies, existence of district safety plans. Our intention is not to reinvent the wheel. We really want to build on what is already there. That's our approach. But we have to build it in because it's a minimum requirement. And so we reflected not to deflect from what is already there, but to build on what is already there. So I wanted to start off by saying that. I also want to give you the assurance, Chair, in terms of the Auditor General, and we just had our engagement session with the Auditor General yesterday. The issues that were flagged last year, all of those issues have been addressed. So you certainly as the chairperson, you don't have to worry at this point, not in terms of those issues. There may be other issues moving forward, but certainly not in terms of those issues that were raised last year. The issue of electric cars replacement, it's not to only have electric cars, but to find what is the optimal balance between electric cars, because the big thing about electric cars is to ensure that there's the infrastructure. I mean, I would have loved to have gone to Beaufort West with an electric car, but if I'm uncertain as to whether there's enough charging stations all the way en route. I'm obviously not going to use it. But it's important that we are clear in where do we want to take the issue of electric vehicles. And I mean, I think the other issues, I know Deirdre is waiting to share and to respond to the very many comments around transport, from a transport operations side, how we working with in terms of coexistence, minibus taxi industries, the formalization, all of those issues. Deirdre, I hand over to you.
Sorry, Chair, I don't want to interrupt. I've just seen they've mentioned sound's gone. I think you'll maybe just pull your mic a bit closer. Sorry.
Yeah.
Still
Welcome.
There we go. So yes, let's try that again. I think it really is just a legacy term. And the fact that in terms of accessing grants and that, it was a requirement from National that they are formed into companies. I tend to agree with a lot of your comments around formalization and not referring to them as an informal economy. I think it's just the company issue and the compliance around that. In terms of the job seeker travel voucher, I hear you. The initial idea was to just open it up to youth. So anybody from 18 to 35, and it's morphed a little bit in terms of getting comments from various role players, but we are looking at expansion in various scenarios, remember, just to make it more accessible to people. From the coexistence perspective, so we've definitely looked at the operational model. I think it's a problem that is being faced across the country, is how do you get your BRT, VOC, scheduled services to coexist in a non-volatile way? Because right now it's really serious competition. It's volatile, and we need to just get to figure out a plan. So we've looked at, in George specifically, how does those 40 operators, they're actually less than 30, 40 operating license, but less than 30 operators, how are they currently driving in Thembalethu? Because the operational cost is so high, we find that they don't often make it over the bridge. They tend to do this internal route system because it doesn't make sense for them to go over the bridge. So what we're looking at is how to route the two. They are not going to be a feeder service. It's just about coexistence for now in stage one. It is, we look at what they make. So it's making more sense for them to just feed to Nelson Mandela Boulevard. And we noted that and brought that into our model and looked at how we can assist them. So we will put trackers on. They've agreed to that. There's a lot of things industry is asking us to do as a result of Blue Dot. It's track my vehicle because I could see where I'm going wrong. I need to be able to identify my vehicle easily. And a vehicle registration number is too long. So a particular type of branding. It does help with enforcement because industry actually wants us to assist with enforcement in that respect. So in terms of coexistence, we are moving quite swiftly with that to see how it can work without your comment around people wanting to use the minibus taxi because it's a lot more flexible. Absolutely. In George, however, it is so much cheaper because a lot of people have to transfer. and there's a transfer window of an hour that's for free. So they're saving about 50% of their transport costs. So even though the minibus taxi can get them there faster, they tend to stick to the bus because of the reliability factor as well. So they time, when their factory, when they have to clock in, they know 5:7 bus gets me there at quarter to 8. So we're noticing that we do a travel survey every year. We have a 92% satisfaction rate. So I think it would be a little different in the metro, because some of the routing is, they do the round trip in an hour, where a minibus taxi service could probably do it in 40 minutes. So that is a real thing in the metro setting. In terms of the City of Cape Town's NMT strategy, absolutely correct, member. This is just an update that they're doing, and that we're incorporating into the plan, and to make sure that it gets highlighted. Okay, devolution. Thank you, Minister. In terms of Member Constable, what is the rural transport strategy? I'm actually going to speak to your question as well as the Chair's question. We are well aware that there is such a need in our rural communities, but people live so far away from each other. Any transport solution is fairly expensive. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be doing something. I'm just making the point it's expensive. So many years ago, Chairperson, Central Karoo specifically, the train you're referencing, we came up with a Central Karoo mobility strategy, where 3 times a week we scheduled a taxi service that linked to the train schedule. Unfortunately, right now, the train schedule is almost non-existent. So what we've done is a Central Karoo strategy now. We're starting with all the Central Karoo towns, Member Constable, where we're looking at what is the need, what the operators there, the travel patterns, looking at all that, looking at people that's behind the bakkie, or truck to get to shopping. So we've assessed all of that, and we're looking to do a scheduled 3 times a week service in certain towns, and one in certain towns will be once a week only, where there's a need. We'll also look at bicycle distribution on top of that particular service for the kids, because the kids do walk a large distance. We also want to look at how we can support WCD with learner transport that's outside of the policy, the 5K policy. So that all incorporates, and we're hoping, in the new financial year, just to come show the committee what we've done in relation to that. We will do a mobility strategy for every district, but right now we felt that from a Central Karoo perspective, the need's the greatest. As I mentioned to the committee, I think it was at our previous meeting, we prioritize towns around the growth potential of towns. So in Central Karoo, the growth potential is fairly low, so it would never necessarily go up high in the priority, but because of the need and the expansive nature of where people reside to where they work, it's a priority for us. The district safety plan, it's not a resource intensive. If I get anything wrong, or don't, you can add Billy. But it was really, you can't go into a district, you can't go into West Coast and think your plan is going to work in Central Karoo, the same enforcement plan. So the district safety plan was really the traffic chief with all the traffic chiefs in that particular district coming together and saying, these are the challenges in our town specific. This is where most of the fatalities are happening. So they come up with an enforcement model specific to the town. So I'm not going to say it's resource intensive or very costly, because now they're integrating their operations. So each district will get a plan like that. I think with Overberg, they saw an 80% reduction in road and pedestrian fatalities in the first year of implementation. There was a change of guard, so the participation by local authority dwindled a bit, and now we're trying to encourage them and institutionalize these plans. Ministers doing roundtables, where's enforcing this kind of partnership now, Member Constable. Then in terms of the public participation process, we have done this many a time where we go to town halls and we spend 12, 14 hours a day, because we also know people will only come after It used to be Noord for Noord, and what was the other soapie? Sewende Laan. So we would stay up until about 9 o'clock at night at town halls across the province, and you get 2-3 people when you do a public participation process. If it's not housing or education, you don't get the kind of attendance. So what we do now is we make sure there's a hard copy in every library. We put it out on social media. We put little adverts out in the local newspapers. The radio ones are a little bit expensive, so we tend to hold back on that. And we try and get it out there that here's an opportunity to comment with the poster, so people, when they know where to go get it. Because I know it's going to be difficult for somebody to print this document. So we print it, make sure it's accessible for people. If we need it to be done in Braille, we also make that service available on request, all of that. But just to actually do the full, what they used to say, the gold star public participation, where you go to all the town halls, it's incredibly expensive and time consuming. But it's something that we may need to reconsider in future again. But for now, that's going to be the approach with the public participation. In terms of Member Masipa's question around aviation and maritime, quite correct. It's a land transport framework. What we felt is that one cannot ignore that element because it forms part of the chain, and that's why it finds its home in a land transport framework. It is not an area where we have got a lot of specialists in, I must also add, where we devote a lot of resources, but it's important to understand the issues and how it needs to be addressed and have a strategy to align it with every other strategy. Because you cannot see these things in isolation. In terms of Member Nkenju, set goals that's realistic. Is 80% realistic? Absolutely. By 2050, absolutely. What would be the most important and immediate actions in 5 years, if you want to get to that, is just an interesting fact before I get to this. I didn't know that the courier companies are now poaching the minibus taxi drivers. And when I was told that, was like they were explaining one of their biggest issues. And I think any organization's biggest issue is their human resource. You have to capacitate, empower, all of those things. And then I realized when they told me their drivers are being poached by the courier companies, and thinking about how courier company drivers drive, it makes perfect sense. So I think it's a real problem. So remember, I think the focus to get to 80% largely has to be on rail restoration, and I couldn't agree more, expansion. It has to find, I mean, the Blue Downs link has been coming on for years, but we need to stabilize. In 2012 to 2015, Metrorail in our province was moving about 600,000 passengers a day. If we get up to 80,000 now, it's a lot. So I think the stabilization and restoration for the next 5 years is critical. I think that we've discussed one of Minister's projects that he'd like for us to consider is the rail link, the high-speed. It's going to have to be a high-speed rail link to certain strategic rural towns. So I think, I don't know if you caucused before, but you have the same ideas. Then in terms of our public transport strategy, rail being the backbone, the expansion thing we've spoken about, the restoration. Oh, public transport lanes, member, that is the chapter on the infrastructure strategy. I think it's actually page 93. PTIs are very prominent. We engage with the city every 2 weeks on all the work being done in relation to the minibus taxi and Shayela Smart. So PTIs, they've got a PTI upgrade program. It's incredibly expensive, but it does, and you'll see the priority given to PTIs. It's about creating dignity, and it's important. I don't know when last members were at Bellville or Wynberg or Cape Town Station Deck. We need to provide more dignified spaces for our citizens. member mentioned that we speak about conflict with national in the document. I'm not quite sure if members refer to the only time we speak about conflict in the document is when we stress all the policy and legislation and how we have to comply, and nothing we do can be in conflict with a national piece of legislation. So I think that's the only area where that's raised. From a safety and security, very valuable input, very good questions about being proactive. And that's exactly what we're trying to do through the conflict resolution strategy, is we almost categorize conflicts or potential conflicts. You know, the small little fires, where are they? What is the existing conflict in the entire province? Categorize them and have different approaches to different, and we don't do this on our own. We do it with law enforcement agencies. We actually do it with industry as well. So that was that. Minister spoke about the shift of freight. And also just in terms of the National Land Transport Strategic Framework, absolutely. The shift from road to rail from a freight perspective is it found its house about 15, 20 years ago in the NLTSF. Minibus taxi legal operations, as Minister said, it's very important to understand your client. And our client right now is the minibus taxi operator, but we need to know, Operator Jacobs, what got you into the minibus taxi industry? So we profiled them. We profiled, why is it? One of the questions we actually posed, do people elect to come and be a minibus taxi driver? And Mr. Titi's response was, if he has no alternative, he'll become a driver, which was absolutely so true. This is not they're not an employee of choice, definitely not. And the illegals, there's different reasons for illegals, member. You'll have illegals because the government process has not happened fast enough. One of the reasons we're working and doing Shayla Smart is because City cannot open capacity at Station Deck, Cape Town, PTI. They just don't have space. So that's about 1,500 operating licenses that can't be granted because there is no ranking space for them. So what we've come up through Shayla Smart is an alternative way of operating. So you don't have to go into Station Deck. You can go to a strategic stop and go that will put on the road, and then you can go to a temporary holding area and not necessarily. And that would free up 20 routes just in Station Deck itself, which is the equivalent of about 1.5 operating licenses. So we know that that is one of the reasons people are referred to as illegal. There are the illegals that are just in a place where the route is saturated. It does happen, but those are the two primary reasons. And this has always been seen as a business to be able to put bread on the table. If I have nothing else, because it takes 10,000 Rand to get in, to go to Toyota, which I'm really fighting against, and I know it's not our mandate, but a deposit of 10,000 Rand just to get a quantum, I think there should be a lot more stringent requirements around that. That was that. The tourist, I hear you, take care of those at home first. Prioritize that. Are we being reasonable? There is quite a bit of tourists. Atlantic Seaboard that does use my city, which is public transport. I do like it when rail, Soccer World Cup 2010, when you have rail operating and everybody uses it to get to the stadiums. It shows what can be done. So I hope that not hope. Our job is to get us back there. So that is what we're working towards. Chairperson, I'm so glad that my HOD took the AG question. We spoke about the DSPs, and then also the rural transport approach and how we're going to approach this. The minibus taxi task team, we haven't met in a few months simply because out of the task team, we have established a working group. So just yesterday was a working group meeting. I have it almost every week with the Sintako leadership. And that is to work on finalizing the business plan for Shayla. And when I say working on that, we literally read sentence by sentence and make sure that the leadership understands, because the next step is to go to the regional, the regions, and go explain to their members. They've added some good input. It's taken us 5 sessions to go through the entire business plan. We're trying to figure out how to introduce some of their big challenges. And one of their biggest challenges is their drivers. I do want to hazard a guess and say that I think very close to 80% of minibus taxi drivers would be non-compliant. And it's simply because they can rack up 20,000 Rand in fines in a day. Therefore, they will not be able to renew their PRDP, so that would make them non-compliant. Because it's a 5,000 Rand fine is where just 4 tires over a barrier line. That's 5,000 on its own. There's fines can go. It's quite extensive. I think I've answered all the questions, Minister Chair, HOD. I hope I have.
Yeah, well, I think if there's the members can indicate if they've not been responded to fully, Chairperson, but I think we have covered the broad spectrum of all of the questions and noted all of the comments that have been made. Thank you, Chair.
Let's see the time, so we can take another round. Member Bryant, Rensu, you must also indicate whether it's a follow-up or it's a new question. And then online, Member Masipa. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairperson, and sorry for only joining physically for the second half. I was following online for the first bit, but I had a bit of a mix-up with my diary, so my apologies. Thank you for the feedback and the presentation. My question is in terms of 7.3, the non-motorized transport strategy, specifically around the intention to set up what's referred to, I think, as a non-motorized transport town, or to identify one. I think it sounds like a really cool idea. And I see the date set is 2025 to 2028. How is this going, and can you just advise a bit more in terms of the rollout of that and how one is going to identify? I mean, I'm assuming you'd want a smaller town to roll it out in the Cape, in Cape Town CBD might be a bit tricky, or somewhere else. But to try and find that, how far along are you? And then the second one was this project in terms of the distribution of bicycles, which I also think is a fantastic idea, in particular for rural communities where we have flat roads that people can cycle around. But obviously, how one goes about doing that, you don't want it to just be a fiscal dumping initiative where bikes just get handed out and they don't really get used properly. So I just want to find out a bit more about that. And then just finally, in terms of the overall safety of non-motorized transport users, I know it does tend to crop up now and again, particularly in the Cape Town metro areas where people will occasionally get mugged while cycling or jogging into town. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. I think the department came here to consult with us as a basis for us to engage with them and make contributions. I know not every contribution one makes, right, it will feature in the final report, or that one must not for it. However, I have a concern on some of the issues. But before I get to that one, Member Constable posed a question. I was not posed a question about the issue of public participation. And public participation is an integral component of our democracy. as it seeks to deepen democracy, to ensure that nothing about our people without them. That's the essence of it. Now, you raise a concern in respect to how our people respond to it. And therefore, the department opt to what? Developing a form for submission and put it in what? In public libraries and so on. When you're making this statement, you could not give us feedback in respect to how people respond to that. Because, and it appears as the only approach, and it assumes that our people use this library. Our people use the library, and all of them. They use the library. Now, then there is a problem. And it appears that, you could not demonstrate any commitment to respond to the poor turnout to public hearings. And I think the department ought to make some mechanism to ensure that our people go out. And that we communicate in a language and in a manner in which they are going to understand. And the value of what we are communicating. And what does this mean in their real life? So, I'm not impressed, by that response and that, and rely on that. Very few, even the middle class, by the way, not all of them visit libraries. You can ask the MSc, as when last did they visit the library, and which library? It doesn't even have a card, a library card. I do. And you don't need to be a scholar to have a library card. Okay, that one is a fact. And I want to assume maybe all of you. So, the second point, maybe you do not get me.
Sorry, is that still the follow-up?
It's a follow-up, yes.
Okay.
Because I spoke about 2.3 of the main document. I was deliberate when I requested the main document. I was very deliberate. It talk about 2.3 page, I think page 25. Talk about conflict between national and provincial land transport policy. That's my argument. Right? Now, and you make a point to say there is strong alignment between national and provincial and land transport policy. However, there are some areas of misalignment. And my question was located within the context of those misalignments. That have you established elsewhere in Gauteng, the city of Tshwane, Johannesburg, and so on, in KZN? What is their experience and what is their attitude? And how are they responding? How do they see or view this misalignment? What you term as misalignment? And what is their response? So, I felt that I must clarify that issue. The final issue related to expansion, rail restoration. There we agree. You say, and this is in the document, that this framework is for the next 5 years and beyond. Why are you interested on other aspects to even plan for 2050? But you can't plan for the rail expansion for a longer period. Then for me, that's why I have a concern. Yes, at the most immediate is restoration and stabilization, if I may use your word, right, of the rail, right? But again, must look ahead, further expansion of the rail. That's my argument. I'm not saying it should be the most immediate. It will be impractical. So those are the points follow-up points which I felt that I must elevate. Chair, thanks.
Thank you, Member Masipa.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite a tall order to speak after Honorable Benson. A quick one, Chair. do a follow-up to the minister. Thanks for the answer with regards to the the ports and the maritime and the airlines. The issue for me really is about how does the strategy really contribute towards the growth for jobs strategy G4J, because I think it's crucial that we get our ports working. And when you talk about infrastructure, and I think you, Chair, alluded to it to say that, you don't have the budget to do the things that you want to do. Isn't there this an opportunity maybe to look at as to how you can be capacitated and really call for, increased budget to assist in some of the areas that we are struggling? We are having, obviously, the issue of the lending in George at the moment with regards to ATNS, which is not working sometimes. The ports are also, a bit challenged. So I was kind of really excited to see that you are really encroaching into that space, because I was hoping that, you will really firmly say, this is an important area to really contribute, because it is, these areas are our economic drivers. They are, one on the airline is tourism, and one on the other side, we're doing lots of exports. So I just want to really hear, Chair, through you, as to if the minister is really looking towards that, and as to how really he sees these other areas in terms of the economic contribution. And I think maybe to the point of economic contribution, we are seeing quite large activities happening in city of Cape Town, but the rural economy is still really struggling. How is the minister, seeing using this land transport strategy to really ensure that there is a stimulation of rural economy? Because definitely there is challenges of ghost towns that are really taking place out there because of agricultural challenges and so forth. But I think it will be great to just hear as to how does the minister and his department see an opportunity in terms of really reinvigorating, the rural economy. And I'm sure Honorable Constable will be quite excited to hear me speaking about this, because, we have also, invited the special zone to come and engage us on how they plan to do some of the special zone in these rural areas. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think my last comment, taking note that we did ask that please give us some few minutes so that we can complete, because we're supposed to finish at 12. I think that for me, again, the issue of the infrastructure, I'm not sure whether the transport grant specifically for the roads come directly to you or it goes straight to the infrastructure. Therefore, that's why I was asking, if now there is no funding, and also it's not your mandate to do infrastructure, why are you putting it as part of your performance? Yet there's nothing, which is completely different, like in health, where the grant goes to health and then they give it to the infrastructure, similar to the education. But in this case, there's no money that comes to you. So, but you wish to fix things that are beyond your control. So that's why I wanted that question. And then secondly, when I ask about the iron ore train, not probably the environmental department can sort the iron ore part of it, but for me it was about how do you utilize the existing infrastructure? Yes, rail is not under you, but because you already alluded to in terms of how you can be able to improve rail, how can we use that one? But there are others. Pello Pepper train, it connects the whole winelands, the Overberg, the Swellendam, the Mossel Bay, the Beaufort West. This is all of those. I think there are about 12 sites, the Durance. It's the structure is there. So at what extent probably, although there might not be, it's not coming to the metro, but anyway, it parks there at the Transnet, the metro. So how can you be able to piggyback and those in regard to those kind of structures? Remember, always for me, it's about the anti-saras from Nersvlakte, the anti-saras from the cracks. Now, lastly, because I heard Mayor Deidre, when we're speaking about one of the minister's dream, it's about the issue of the bullet train, of the bullet train or something faster. I didn't want to ask that, but I always envy and hate it that Gauteng has got it in regard to the Gautrain, and now they're expanding to the Limpopo and the Mpumalanga, and then we brag that we are the best, and then we don't think around that. I hate it when I'm in London, and then I do all of these connections. I said, I wish we were in Cape Town. So for me, the fastest route, because once you try to for the emission of the carbon emission less than 2%, because we're part of the climate change, the jet and all of those. And we've seen the high level of the cars on the road. It's not only those within Cape Town, but people coming from work in Cape Town, from the Stellenbosch, from the Paarl, they're coming here. If you could have a fastest train, of peak hours, going to these smaller nearest ones, you could be able to at least to reduce some of the congestion in addition to the local ones in regard to the metro. So I think that's it. And if you could probably respond and try maybe to make it in 20 minutes or so. Thank you very much.
No. Chair, thank you very much, and to the honourable members for the questions and comments. Firstly, I would just want to speak about what Member Masipa is saying. We know for the next 5 years, the focus for the Western Cape government is for economic growth and for jobs. Is to create jobs. Those are the two most important things. So in each and every ministry or department within this government, we must make sure that we contribute to those two goals. So the reason why, as much as some of the functions does not fall under us, like specifically the issue of George, we have been to George several times, specifically to speak about the issues that they are currently confronted with. And look, where is it that we can do from the side of the Western Cape government into making sure we assist them. And, we do engage as much as the responsibility does not fall within us, because we understand the importance of that particular airport, specifically to the economy of that area and what it contributes to Western Cape. And the last one, the Rapid Rail project, that's a project that one of my officials are actually passionate about, the chair. And we have written to the to Provincial Minister of Finance, specifically to say, while we are waiting for devolution, what is it that we can do from the side of rail, making sure that we actually have a similar thing that is happening in Gauteng. I have personally had engagement with the CEO of the Gautrain and the Minister of Transport in Gauteng, with some officials, where we say we would want to work together specifically on making sure that we tap into the expertise and making sure that we have a similar train within the Western Cape. So we are actually on top of that, and we will undertake feasibility studies to make sure what are the probabilities, where are we going to have it, and by when, but we are looking at that. And also, Chair, I think what is important also, what we need to understand, we agree, we need to make sure that the restoration of rail and specifically the ports, it's non-negotiable. We need to contribute to that. And we as Mobility are also working together with DDET in making sure that it does actually happen. And I have given a directive to the officials to say, this particular draft must be given to the Office of the Presidency, because some of the issues that we want to address in terms of freight and rail are the issues that have been covered on Vulindlela 2.0. They also have the same issues that they want to achieve so that they can also contribute to the economy of this country. And we want to see, in terms of what we are trying to bring in, whether it talks to what they want to achieve and what opportunities are there for us to collaborate so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we are working with partners, because we understand we can no longer work in isolation, and whatever we want to achieve in making sure that there is jobs in this country and there is economic growth, we need to hold and hold each other's hands. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just deal with one or two of the comments, and then Deirdre will add to that. I know she's waiting to respond to Member Brian's question around the non-motorized town, because things are well underway, Member Brian. Yeah, as well as on the distribution of bicycles. But on the issue of safety, I can report that the issue of safety, especially people getting mugged within the city precinct, it's now been coming on quite some time. The issue was raised at the Transport Priority Committee, which is a meeting that is co-chaired between myself and the acting HOD of mobility and the brigadier responsible for policing within the province. That's Brigadier Tokula. He wasn't there on Tuesday, but Wednesday. But the issue was raised there. It was reported that between SAPS and the Metro Police, they've effected a number of arrests of individuals because, unfortunately, a big part of the problem is that the persons, they know exactly who they are and where they are, but I think it's on Prasa or Transnet ground that they are residing currently. But they have arrested a number of individuals and confiscated a number of, a lot of the property that was stolen, including bicycles. So that is something that certainly the SAPS, in terms of Brigadier and Quincy, and Metro Police are busy handling currently, but it is dealt with within our Transport Priority Committee. I think to Member Benson, the issue around public participation, we have noted the concern, and we will definitely, in our planning as we move forward, see how we can give or respond fully in ensuring that there is more appropriate level of public participation. So your comments and concerns and that of Member Constable is duly noted. In terms of the fund, the funding issue, I just want to say to Member Masipa that we put a very strong case forward at our MTech engagement with Provincial Treasury and the MEC for Finance around funding mechanisms, recognizing the extent that public transport in particular has been historically underfunded. There was a small additional benefit, but not extensive, but we are exploring alternative funding mechanisms with the Provincial Treasury, and because we all recognize the need to ensure and enable adequate funding within the public transport sector. My last response, Chair, before I hand over to Deirdre, is around the reflection of, for example, infrastructure. Why do we refer to it here? And I just want to come back to the very first sentence in the presentation, which says, this PLTF provides strategic guidance to the Western Cape transport sector as a whole. Roads are an integral part of our transport sector. So it's not just what the mobility department is able to do, but speaks to all of our stakeholders, City of Cape Town, Airports Company, Prasa, Transnet, and Department of Infrastructure. So we want to make sure that it's a holistic picture and not just limited to that which the department is able to do. Otherwise, it would probably be a 50-page document and not a 360-page document. Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to Deirdre.
Thank you, HED. Thank you, Chairperson, for looking out for us. From an infrastructure perspective, we will just add on to what HED is saying. We're engaging with DOI and City of Cape Town. What we've done is extracted their priorities out of their like the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework, as an example, that DOI has done. The City of Cape Town's Comprehensive Integrated Transport Plan will confirm it now through the formal engagement processes. That is this your priority? Will funding be put to it, etc., etc.? But this is how we see from a provincial perspective. This is how we see it all fitting together, Chairperson. Then in terms of Member Brian's questions, I am very excited about this. So I liken it to if there's a new development member, so you always have a show house so that you can see how this is going to look. And that's exactly what we want to do. And I'm allowed to say the town, Minister? Yeah. Overstrand. So we've done a lot of work with Overstrand. So we've done the NMT master plan. So all the work that we've invested, we are now going to build on, and we don't want to be everything to everybody because then you don't see the impact. We will then do the bicycle distribution on top of the NMT cycle lanes, everything the strategy says we want to implement. The taxi rank facilities we've already designed and got through to detailed design. We now want to construct. So it's bringing all that planning work that's paid ready into fruition. It's going to cost a bit of money, and we will do it as quickly and incrementally as we can over the next couple of years so that people can go to the town and say, oh, that's what a NMT town looks like. So that's the idea around there. With bicycle distributions, we've been doing it for about 15 years. Initially, it started as a national program where we would just distribute as the province. We then came up with our own distribution program where there's 3 phases. So the pre-phase is where you go out and you speak to potential beneficiaries. They have to apply to get to distribution. So it's neighborhood watches, it's SMMEs, it's schools, and we have to do training. It's part of it from a liability perspective, but a responsibility point of view. We then distribute, Minister, is a very big part of the program, and we do a post-M&E, post-mortem of what happens, who's still using the bikes. From a maintenance perspective, we go look at also, it's a full package, because we've noted some of the challenges with the national program. We'll still assist national, but our program on average distributes about 400 across the province a year. National gives about 200 a year. That depends, and some years we don't get an allocation, but we've seen it to be such a beneficial last mile home, and for the rural communities, it's the only way of getting it out.
Okay. All right. I just check.
So I hope that covers Member Brian's question.
You can just say for the benefit of Member Constable the fact that we're both at West next week.
We bicycle. Shouldn't I leave that to us? But there is a distribution in Beaufort next week. The safety. So the Belize developed a non-motorized transport safety strategy that looks at all and categorizes all these issues. Lots of engagement. So like HED said, with Edie Botto, the Safety and Security Executive Director of the City of Cape Town, looking at hotspots where we can support. So yeah, it's definitely on our radar, Member Brown. I think that's all, Chairperson.
The hand from Member Masip, I'm not sure is the old hand or is a new one.
Old hand, sorry.
Okay.
Can I just say, Chair, you've also raised the issue of where we need to use existing infrastructure. Those are excellent comments, and we'll certainly be looking at that because iron ore train and all of those kind of things. So it's all part of, I think, as we move forward, how we reflect and build on what is existing already. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, we have reached the end of the questions. Again, we want to thank the department for coming. I know it's quite a lot of preparation. Yeah. So it's a lot of preparation. It might be maybe 5 or 10 slides, but it has to involve the whole of the department, even those who are sitting maybe at the offices in Beaufort West and all of those. So we want to acknowledge and thank you for that. We're looking forward for our next engagement, specifically on the ministerial priorities. But thank you very much. And also for those who are there online from the department, thank you very much. All the best. This is a weekend. Work hard, play hard. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. The members, we're not going to take a break, members. Let's just finish and then we leave. We want to be done by 12. It won't take long. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, members. I do know, member Nganzu, that for you Friday is not a Friday, Monday. You're still energized to continue. For us, it's Friday now. We still have to go to Beaufort West. But thank you very much. Are there any resolutions? Take into consideration that member Haron did previously suggest in terms of the PRASA. But what I was asking the PO, just probably instead of asking the PRASA to come here, let's identify a site, their site, whether it's a rail and whatever, where actually they do the presentation, and then we do the oversight as well. But at this stage, if you have got any ideas where we could be able, we don't have the dates, but whether like in the metro or anywhere where they could be able to come, if you could just make such suggestions as part of the previous resolution. Is there any resolution for today or any requests or any recommendations?
I think the only thing, Chair, and it seems like it's already in planning, but at some stage to get a presentation on this proposal for the Overstrand non-motorized transport town. I mean, Overstrand is quite, it's not exactly a town. I mean, it's quite a large region, so just it'd be interesting to find out how they envisage doing that. Or if it would just be Hermanus or Kleinmond or one of those areas, but might be nice to get a presentation at some stage. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. That's one. And what else?
Just mine is to. I'm not sure about the next stages and the extent with which submissions made here will indeed feature, and us getting the final product before it is submitted, maybe to the national minister. But on the issue, I think I want to stress and say, let's focus on the site identified or proposed by Member Heron, right, and take it from there in respect to oversight visit, both oversight and content oversight. Thanks.
For the PRASA. Yes. Okay. But as I indicated that at this stage, I don't know exactly where could it be. But what I was saying is that instead of them just coming here, PRASA just doing the PowerPoint, let's do both. Where in that place we do the oversight, plus also they do the whole of their strategy in relation to the Western Cape Rail and everything. And then we'll extend it to the provincial department, if they could be able maybe also to be part of that. Yeah. We've got that.
Sorry, Chair. And I think also, I'm not sure whether we spoke about the issue of God George as well as my city, in respect to both oversight and also getting the current happenings, but like God George in this instance. Thanks.
Okay. For the specifically now for the bus.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We've got that. Noting that for this one is for public comment from the 28th Feb. They indicated, I thought they had because they indicated they've got a graphic, because I thought they were going to dish out the graphic, which is, especially now, some of us will be that side, just to give it to the people in a shortest form, so that if they want to make a comment. Probably, maybe is there any way that if they do have like a friendly, readable graph that they're going to use for the people in terms of for the public comment on this. Okay. Other inputs, we have got 3 committee meetings that happened. We've got the minutes, the meeting of the 12th November, 28th, and the 7th. If we could start on the, for the first one on the 12th, is there any inputs? They are nothing short. We don't have to go through them. Yes, Member Masipa?
Yeah, I just want to ask if we can include maybe, the department provide us with their wish list in terms of their financial, their financial projections around this particular, land strategy framework.
You mean the costing?
Yeah, the costing.
Okay. Got that. Thank you. Back to the minutes. Tuesday, 12th November. Any comments? Do you have to have a proposer? Member John?
Propose.
Member Masipa, is the hand to second this or and?
Hold hand, but I second. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for this. And then the 28th November. Member Heron proposing, second man, Member Constable. Thank you very much. And then the last one, recently for the 25 million. Any proposer? Member Bryan and Member Heron, second. We're done. Thank you very much. Okay, one more thing.
Sorry. While we were in the meeting, I got invitations from the minister for the bicycle handover in Beaufort West and surrounding areas. We have a program already. So, but there are some handovers that are happening a bit later in the day. So I'm going to send those to members, and maybe members can indicate if they're interested in going or not. However, just there might be an issue with transport since we don't have a minibus that can take all members. And it's also not also included in our bus plan, the transport plan.
Okay. No, but roughly which days?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I think it would be helpful, I suppose, for us as well to get maybe a breakdown of what the ministerial activities are going to be throughout these cluster visits. But maybe that's a separate question we can put through, because obviously some of them are going to overlap with things that we are attending already. So, but I'll try to see if I can get that sent out. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Noting for the mobility, when we ask in preparation for the cluster B, both the minister and all the department, even I behind the scenes ask the individual chief of director in terms of their programs. They say they've got nothing, except at the time for the bicycles, they said it was the Premier's program. So that's why we'll find that in the cluster, there is nothing for mobility. So now we're being told that, so he's the one now who will be doing it, or is it because at the time it was going to be the Premier and then him in attendance. So now I think it has changed. Okay, all right. If you could just maybe share that, people can see how if they will be able to do it. Thank you very much. Is there anything else? No. See you in Beaufort. Thank you very much. Take care.